Good evening and welcome to the Orange County, Florida Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. It's the Vote for Me. I am Michelle Mangum and I'm excited to serve as your virtual MC. Before we get started, we hope that you enjoyed the musical sounds of our very own DJ Cool Breeze. This evening, we are excited to share with you information about the importance of using your vote and your voice to navigate through the voting process, understand voter protection laws and voting rights, locate your polling place, explore vote by mail, and early voting alternatives. We are excited that we have presentations from our event partners, the Orange County Supervisor of Elections Office, the Osceola County Supervisor of Elections Office, the NAACP, Equal Ground, and the League of Women Voters of Orange County. Their representatives are also here to take questions, so feel free to drop your questions in the chat. Joining us live, we will have Supervisor Arrington with Osceola County Supervisor of Elections, Program Manager Alicia Bromfield with Equal Ground, President Tiffany Hughes with the NAACP, and Gina Hall with the League of Women Voters of Orange County. Before we get started, we wanted to share a few housekeeping notes with you. Please insert your questions in the chat throughout our program this evening. Our committee is moderating the chat and will compile the questions for our speakers to answer. Also, pay attention. We have a few games at the end to see what you've learned. If posting on social media, please tag us. Use the following hashtags: hashtag OCACDST, hashtag OCACDST votes, and hashtag social action. What better way to start It's the Vote for Me than hearing from Candace Mercado, a representative from the Orange County, Florida Supervisor of Elections Office.
Hello, my name is Candace. I'm with the Orange County Supervisor of Elections Office. We are here to help register citizens to vote and be a resource for trusted election information. What are the requirements to register to vote? You need to be 18 years old or 16 or 17 to pre-register. You need to be a U.S. citizen and you need to be in possession of your civil rights. To register to vote, you will also need to provide your name, date of birth, residential address, signature, and Florida ID number, or the last 4 digits of your social security number. The deadline to register to vote in an election is 29 days before that election. This applies to new Florida registrations. If you are already registered to vote in Florida, you do not need to re-register before each election. However, it is a good idea to make sure you keep your registration updated if your name, address, or signature changes. You can register to vote or make updates to your registration at registertovoteflorida.gov. You can also register at your office at 119 West Cayley Street at the DMV or at any Orange County Public Library. We have many elections coming up, including the City of Orlando election November 2nd, municipal elections in March 2022, a primary election in August 2022, and a general election in November 2022. Visit ocfelections.com/election calendar for all upcoming elections and their registration deadlines. Here in Florida, we have 3 convenient ways to vote. You can vote early, at your assigned polling place, on election day, or by mail. The deadline to request a vote by mail ballot for an election is 5 p.m. 10 days before the election. For more information on voting by mail and how to request a vote by mail ballot, visit ocfelections.com/vote by mail. For more information or any questions you may have, feel free to visit ocfelections.com or call us at 407-836-8683. Thank you.
We appreciate the information shared by Candace Mercado of the Orange County Supervisor Elections Office. These important nuggets will help you know how to register to vote, but more importantly, the upcoming election dates. Remember, your vote gives a voice to the issues that matter to you. Your vote makes a lasting impact in your community. We've heard from the Orange County Supervisor of Elections. While we have access to registering to vote, each county may have different steps to access information, register, and oftentimes voting dates are different from county to county. We now have a video presentation from the Osceola County Supervisor of Elections office.
Hi, my name is Carrie Ewald, and I'm the Community Relations Manager for the Osceola County Supervisor of Elections Office. I'm here today to talk to you about the importance of your address as a voter, language barriers as a voter, and where you can register to vote at. So let's start with the first question. Why is your address important? When you register to vote, you must register at the address in which you currently live. This needs to be a residential address and not a commercial address. It also cannot be a P.O. box. Your address determines which precinct you live in. In Osceola County, we currently have 100 precincts. This map shows almost all of them here. The precinct in which you live determines the polling location that you are assigned to on election day. It also determines who and what will be on your ballot. Not sure which precinct you live in? You can visit our website to find that information. Our website is www.voteosceola.com. You'll click on voter information and then check your voter status. The check your voter status page looks like this. Here you will put in your personal information for it to pull up your voter information. Here it will tell you which precinct you live in and which address you're currently registered at. If this matches where you currently live, then great, you're all set. If not, you'll need to update your address on our website or one of the other methods of registration, which we'll get to in just a second. Let's move to our second question. Is English your second language? If so, no worries. We have lots of services for you. Over half of our staff members are bilingual, so we are very easily able to handle phone calls or over-the-counter customer service issues. Our website is also available in 2 languages. It completely mirrors itself. So for every English page, there is a Spanish page. Also at our polling locations, at least one election worker is bilingual. Some of our locations are staffed with almost all bilingual election workers. Let's move to our last question. Want to register to vote? We have lots of options for this. The most convenient one is our website. Remember, it's www.voteosceola.com. You can register through our website using your Florida ID number. If you don't have one, or you'd rather not register this way, you can print out a voter registration application from our website as well. Or you could come visit us in person, or you could visit a government assistance office or one of the county libraries, because they all have voter registration applications available to you. Our website is a great source of information. Please visit it early and often. If you have other questions, you could always give us a call. Our number is 407-742-6000. Or come visit us in person. We're really nice. Our address is 2509 East Earl Bronson Memorial Highway, Kissimmee, Florida, 347. Happy voting!
Thank you so much, Carrie Ewald. Supervisor Arrington is reading through the chat for any questions you may have, so please feel free to post any questions in the chat. Now, speaking on behalf of the NAACP Orange County, Florida branch is their president, Tiffany Hughes. The NAACP has been an integral part of change within our communities. From its inception in 1909, the NAACP is the foremost, largest, and most widely recognized civil rights organization in the nation. It's more than 500,000 members and supporters throughout the United States and the world are premier advocates for civil rights in their communities, conducting voter mobilization, and leading grassroots campaigns for equal opportunity.
Hi everyone, my name is Tiffany Hughes, President of the Orange County Branch NAACP. As we take some time to talk about voting, know this: voting is your right, your civic duty, and your chance to make your voice heard. Going to the ballot box affects everything from our roads to our waterways, for funding for our schools to our freedom of speech. So get out, get registered, and get to the ballot box. Please visit naacp.org/vote for more information. Power your vote and prepare to get to the polls. Thanks.
Thank you to President Hughes for the information shared, and more importantly, thank you to the members of the NAACP who continue to carry the torch and the work for our community. Now that you have the rules, let's make sure everyone is playing on equal ground. Presenting on behalf of Equal Ground is Christian Fulwiley-Thomas, the Managing Director of Equal Ground. She is also a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kristen Fulwiley-Thomas. I'm the Managing Director for Equal Ground Education and Equal Ground Action Fund. We are a Black political organization here in the state of Florida, working to engage and empower Black voters and build Black political power. We prioritize our work along the I-4 corridor. So our core counties are Orange, Volusia, Seminole, and Pinellas. And then we also have a Faith Alliance network that works with pastors, Black pastors across the state, to really engage and empower them through the civic engagement process. I'm so excited to be here with you all just to share a little bit of information on the changes to our voting rights, a little bit about redistricting, and how you can get involved in really just educating our communities. We know that here in the city of Orlando, we have a City of Orlando race for commissioners, just districts 1, 3, and 5. That election will take place November 2nd. Early voting will be on October 25th, the 30th, and 31st. So you have 3 days for early voting. Definitely encourage you to take advantage of early voting. If you need to find any information on your early voting sites, or you need to do any check your status of your voting registration, you can visit equalground.vote, and all of those resources and information will be there for you. This is going to likely be the first, where this is for the city of Orlando, the first election for people with the passing of SB 90. So again, I strongly encourage everyone to just take advantage and just double check all of your information so that you are ready to go and able to vote. So let's talk a little bit about the census. We have a lot of resources available that goes in a lot more detail, but I'm going to give a quick overview. So the census is something that happens, redistricting, I'm sorry. I want to talk about redistricting. Redistricting is something that happens every year after the census. And it is where the states redraw their congressional, state, legislative, and other district boundaries to ensure equal proportional representation. And so we know that our state and our congressionals and our local seats will be going through the redistricting process. The census data revealed that the state of Florida will receive an additional congressional seat, which means a lot of our other congressional seats will move because we are adding that seat. We also learned through the census data that Florida became a lot more diverse, which is not shocking. And so there is a website that you can go to, and I'll provide that at the end, where you can read all about the census data and what that means for the state of Florida. But for the sake of time, want to talk a little bit about gerrymandering. gerrymandering is something that did happen in the state of Florida, and we want to be sure that we prevent it and that it doesn't happen again. So gerrymandering is a form of cheating so that a political party or other group can gain power without actually winning a majority of the vote. Politicians gerrymander during the redistricting process to establish a political advantage by manipulating electoral district boundaries. So states must redistrict. That's a process that we go through every 10 years. Gerrymandering is not required. And so it is it's important, and why this matters, because gerrymandering is flat out a form of voter suppression. We don't want politicians to cherry pick their voters and decide who their voters are. It eliminates or protects incumbents when you gerrymander. Discourages challengers. Um, it dilutes minority representation. It splits communities, and it makes legislative compromise difficult or impossible. So we really want to be sure that our communities are engaged in this process and be sure that our elected officials do not draw or do any form of gerrymandering. So the solution, we need to increase public engagement around the redistricting progress to advocate for fair and transparent maps and create creation policies. And so let's just talk about who runs the maps, because that will help on how you engage and how you get involved. So congressional and state legislative districts in Florida are drawn by our Florida legislator. The governor can veto the plan. So your Florida House of Representatives and your Florida senators are who draws your congressional and state maps, which means that new congressional map that I mentioned earlier is going to be drawn by our current legislator. I do want to remind you that this is the same legislation or legislators that passed SB 90. So it's very important that we hold them accountable. Moving to my next point, community organizations can hold them accountable by advocating for fair, legal, and transparent map drawing process. And then Floridians, we can share our stories during public hearings and by directly contacting our legislators. I do want to lift up that your local districts are ran by your local maps or are ran by your local county officials. So here's just a quick timeline. Our legislators and our local Orange County redistricting committees have already started to meet, have already started to look at maps, and they're starting to receive public hearing. I do want to point you into this direction here, bullet 1, 2, 4. So right here, legislative session is January 11th through March 11th. That's when maps will be passed and reviewed. After the legislative session, that is when our governor will review the maps and decide if he was going to veto them or sign those maps, and if determine if a special election or special session is required for those maps. And so this is what your timeline is. We are in the process now, so now is the time for us to be engaged and involved. So Orange County, like I said, your state and congressional maps are passed by our Florida legislator, but our local maps are passed by our local redistricting committee. And so there are 7 meetings remaining in the process, in-person and virtual options, so you can go give public testimony, submit maps, do all of those things in person, or you can watch online. You can learn more at orangecountyfl.net and then /open-government/redistricting 2021. I'll be sure that you all have this information at the conclusion of the presentation as well. Definitely encourage you all to attend the local redistricting process, because of course it's just as important as our state and congressional maps. So what's next? When it comes to voting rights, because SB 90 is already signed into law, it's very important that we educate our community on those changes. Let folks know, encourage them to go to the supervisor of elections office or to equalground.vote, where they can, update any changes or find out the status of their vote by mail. Also, just volunteer. volunteer within your communities, within your sororities and fraternities, within any organization that you're associated with. Or of course, we would love to have you over at Equal Ground to volunteer as well as we go out into the community to educate or to make phone calls to voters around these changes. Also, these voting right changes happen during legislative session. So it is also very important that you're engaged in legislative session. There's going to be additional legislation that comes out that makes changes either for the better or for worse when it comes to our voting rights. So I strongly encourage you to be involved in that process. I will say that Equal Ground, we do a legislative Black, a Take the Lead, which is a Black legislative training where we train leaders around the legislative process, and then we hear from Black leaders around what the priority bills and legislation will be heading into this upcoming session, and how you can be involved, tactics on how to advocate and take that information back to your community. That training is happening December 6th at 6:30 via Zoom. Of course, we would love to have you, and I'll be sure to share that information. And then when it comes to redistricting, you can attend meetings, you can give public comments, you can meet with your leaders, and then you can just ask questions. If you don't know, this process is a lot. Again, it happens every 10 years. So if you're new to the social justice space, or if you just moved to Florida, or you just weren't engaged when we did this the last time, that's okay. You're not alone. A lot of people aren't. It's very important that we ask questions so we understand, so that those of us who know can go and share that information. So definitely I would encourage you to be involved in the local process as well as the state and congressional maps. So I just want to say thank you. This was a very compact version of the voting rights presentation that we typically give, but I just wanted to let you all know about those changes so that you can be prepared. You can always contact me if you want to ask questions or you want a longer presentation. Here's my email address at kristen@equal-ground.com. We have a lot of resources and videos around redistricting. We have a lot of information of the SB 90 changes that gives a little more in depth of what I have shared with you all this evening. So please go to www.equal-ground.com to learn more and to access those resources. And of course, follow us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Again, thank you. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, let me know. But let's go out and educate and empower our communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Equal Ground for that great information shared. I'm sure there are some great questions as a result of this presentation. Be sure to add them in the chat box. Our last organization presenting is the League of Women Voters of Orange County. Gina Hall, who will speak on behalf of this organization, will provide the most current information on the SB 90 legislation. Remember to use the chat box to post your questions.
Good evening. I'm going to try to share my screen. So if folks on the Delta Sigma Theta side could allow me to share my screen, I would appreciate it.
Gina, you have the rights.
Okay, can you see that? Can you see my screen now?
Not yet.
Okay, hang on just a second. Can you see that now?
No, we do not see your screen.
Okay, I'm not sure why that's not happening. Let's see.
Did you click share
Oh,
screen?
share. Okay, hang on. Oh, okay, hang on just a second. How about now?
Yes, we can see your screen now. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Again, it's my pleasure to be here to talk to you, the members of Delta Sigma Theta, about SB 90. I know it's probably been a long day for a lot of you, and so I'm going to kind of go through this fairly quickly, but there's a lot of good information that I want to share with you. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters, and I invite everybody on this call to join us. We are nonpartisan but political, and what that means is we don't advocate for any particular candidate. We don't advocate for any candidate. What we do is we educate and we advocate. And we educate because we think an informed electorate is a smart way to go. And we advocate for policy positions. So we're going to be talking tonight about SB 90. And so when the League of Women Voters advocates for a political position, we do a lot of research and then we come out with our position. The League of Women Voters was established in 1920. We had our 100th anniversary last year. We were actually established 6 months before the Amendment 19 was ratified, which gave women the right to vote. And in 1972, men were accepted into the League, and we actually have 20% of our members are men. So we're happy about that. Tonight, we're going to cover SB 90, and we're going to cover 3 points. One is changes to the vote by mail, which has been alluded to in other presentations, changes to the election administration, and changes to the election protection. But before we start with the formal presentation, I just want to set the table for what we're about to hear. In 2020, by all accounts, the US as well as Florida had the most successful national as well as state election ever. As many of you may know, Florida over the last 20 or so years has had several challenges to voting, most notably in the 2000 election for president, when it was actually decided by the Supreme Court, and that's where we got the hanging chads and things like that. Since that time, there have been other issues that have arisen in the state through various elections. But in 2020, we had more people that voted, we had the most successful election, and all this in spite of COVID-19. So it's not just I'm telling you this, the governor made comments that it was a successful election. And even in last week's Orlando Sentinel, the Secretary of State, Lee, pointed to the fact that Florida had the most successful election. So why did the legislation or the legislators come up with SB 19? I will leave that for you to answer that question. But there were many changes, and I think it's important to for you to know about them. So the first thing is the vote by mail. And the vote by mail, previously, you requested a vote by mail, and that was good for every 2 election cycles. With the passage of SB 90, now you have to request a vote by mail ballot after every election cycle. And we think this is going to confuse people because people that like to vote by mail, they'll think they're automatically going to receive a vote by mail or a ballot, vote by mail ballot, but they won't unless they request them. And also this law prevents the supervisor of elections from just automatically sending out a vote by mail ballot. Some of our supervisor of elections send those out, others don't. I want to tell you there are 67 counties in Florida, and each county has their own supervisor of elections. And there are some nuances that we'll talk about between the different supervisor elections, things they do. But in regards to the SB 90, it says that no supervisor of election can just automatically send out a vote by mail ballot, and that all citizens have to request a ballot every election cycle. Now, if you are already receiving a vote by mail ballot, that will be good through the 2022 election cycle, but then after that, you'll have to request a vote by mail ballot every year or every election cycle. So if you want to request a vote by mail, you can do it by email, by actually writing out in longhand to the supervisor of elections and requesting it. You can go to any supervisor or to your supervisor of elections office in the county that you live in to request a vote by mail, or you can do it by phone. So here's one of the changes, and this is a big one. So before, when you wanted to request a vote by mail ballot, you could do that on a vote by mail envelope that you sent in when you completed a vote by mail ballot. You could just check off a notice on the back of the election form, and you wanted to say continue vote by mail ballots, and you would just continue to get them. Now what happens is, if you want to request a vote by mail ballot, or if you want to change, or if your name changes on your registration, or your address changes, you have to actually fill out a new voter registration. And if you do that either electronically or on a paper ballot or a paper registration, you have to provide your driver's license or your voter ID card or the last 4 digits of your social security number. There are a lot of people, and I'm one of those people, that is very leery about putting any of my personal information on email or electronically or even through the mail. So we think that this may discourage people from signing up for vote by mail ballots, which we know is increasingly a way that people vote these days. People are busy. They don't always have time to vote by mail. They don't always know when the vote by mail is available. Or on election day, there's a lot of stuff going on. So vote by mail has become very popular. But now we feel like there are just roadblocks that have been identified that may give people reason to pause to complete a vote by mail request, or complete a voter registration change outside of going down to the supervisor of elections office. And we feel like this is just making it harder for people to complete their right, which is to vote. Changes to the ballot envelopes, like I said before, when you voted by mail, what you did was you completed your ballot, you put it in the envelope, you signed the back of it, and in Orange County, all you had to do was put it in the mail, because there was postage on that vote by mail envelope that was enough to get that vote by mail ballot to through the post office. Not all counties do that. If you live in Seminole County, they do not supply the postage. So you need to check with what your county does in terms of applying postage to that envelope. But now what you need to do is not only sign on the back of it, which I know a lot of people are leery of doing that, but you also have to provide an email and a phone number in case that the canvassing board or somebody checking the ballots has reason to pause about your signature or anything on that ballot. Now, again, there's a lot of people that don't like their signature being shown, or don't like the fact that, if you put a telephone number or an email address on the back of that envelope and put it in the mail, or you put it in a drop box, who's going to see that information? So I know the last election cycle, some people actually took that vote by mail envelope, put it in an additional brown envelope and took it to the post office to have it weighed and postage applied to that. Again, it's if you're voting by mail and you have any reason to think that you don't want this information being available to somebody that may pick it up, you can put it in a separate envelope, but again, that's more work for people. So again, just another reason why it may be making it more difficult for people to vote by mail. In terms of election administration, there is now more oversight. Parties and candidates are each allowed to have one person overseeing the canvassing board. And what that means is there's going to be more people that are going to be checking ballots, which is not necessarily bad because we want to make sure that every ballot is appropriate, but they may be checking signatures. And I don't know about you, but I would bet that every time I sign my name on something, it's a little bit different than maybe it was before. It's not an exact match. There are some nuances, and especially if you registered to vote many years ago, and sometimes your signature does change a little bit, but that doesn't mean it's not your signature. So there is concern that the more people involved in the oversight, again, not that oversight is not a good thing to make sure that things are done properly, but is there going to be reason to pause to think a signature isn't exact? Because what happens is when they look at that ballot, like your vote by mail ballot, then they will go and they will compare it to the signature that you supplied when you registered to vote. Is it is it a match, and is that you, or is there some nuance to think that maybe somebody signed that ballot for you? And that's why you supply the contact information so they can get so they can call you. So again, oversight is good, but reason to pause to make sure that it's not being abused. The other thing that SB 90 does is beginning at 7 o'clock on the actual voting day, the supervisor of elections must post the number of vote by mail ballots that have been received every hour and post the mail-in ballots that remain to be counted. Again, this is just putting more work on the supervisor of elections office on voting day, which they are very busy. But again, it's just another nuance and another task that they must do when they're trying to do so much on the day of voting. Change number 2 is drop boxes. Drop boxes are an avenue to make it easy for people to put their vote by mail ballot in. Again, in Orange County, you can just put it in the mail, the US Post Office. However, we know that in the last year, there have been some changes to the post office, and the time in which when you put something in the mail, the time it takes to get to where it's destined to go. So there was a lot of concern in the 2020 election that if people put ballots in the mail, that it may take an inordinately long time to get to the supervisor of elections office. So we always tell people, if you're going to put it in the mail, make sure you provide a lot of, a week to 10 days in order to get to where it's going. But a drop box is an avenue where you can put it in that drop box, and it will go directly to the supervisor of elections. Someone will pick it up. Well, before, up to this point, those drop boxes have been able to be monitored by cameras. So a physical person didn't have to be there. With SB 90, that changes, and camera monitoring is no longer acceptable. And all drop boxes have to be monitored by an individual. And so what that does is money from the supervisor of elections office has to be used to pay somebody to monitor that drop box. And it also limits changes to where a supervisor of election can move that drop box within 30 days of an election. So sometimes a supervisor of election may want to change where that drop box is because they feel like they haven't received as many ballots as they were expecting in a certain precinct or area, so they may want to move it. Now there are changes as to how often you can move them and when you can move them. There's also a $25,000 fine for supervisor of elections office if they were to leave drop boxes unmanaged by a physical person. So it appears that although vote by mail was very popular, there are more constraints as to drop box utilization going forward. Again, even though we had a very successful election. Voter assistance, there are changes into who can drop off a vote by mail ballot. Previously, somebody could canvass maybe a neighborhood or ask their neighbor if they wanted them to deliver a ballot to a drop box. Now, the only people that you or I can deliver a ballot to a drop box is an immediate family member, and that's your voter spouse, child, grandparent, grandchild, siblings, spouse's parent, spouse's child, spouse's grandparent, spouse's grandchild, or spouse's sibling. So it's pretty broad. But somebody that's not a family member, you can only bring 2 vote by mail ballots. So you think, well, in Orange County, you can just put it in the mail. But think about people that are in assisted living facilities or in adult congregate living facilities or in the hospital that say, hey, I want to vote, but I can't get to the post office or I can't get to a drop box. So somebody could go into an assisted living facility, but they could only collect 2 ballots from people that aren't related to them, aren't immediate family. Again, this is putting some roadblocks to people that may want to vote that may not have access to get their vote in on time if they're using a vote by mail ballot. Voter registration through this SB 90, there are changes to third-party organizations. The League of Women Voters would be considered a third-party organization. And we go to many community organizations, many community rallies or events, and we register people to vote. Now, I'm authorized to register people to vote because I have been certified through the League of Women Voters. But there have been changes as to our process and what we have to tell or what we need to tell people about our process as we register people to vote. And we think some of these things that we need to tell people might discourage them from wanting to register with a third-party organization, even though through the years we have done everything properly. And I've been involved in voter registration several times, and we've always delivered those voter registrations in a timely manner and properly where they need to go. But there are some steps and hurdles that we need to overcome in order to register people to vote. And we're willing to do that because it's the law, but just hurdles to make it more cumbersome for people to register to vote through third-party elections. Changes to election protections. Let me just tell you about that a little bit. So previously, civic organizations would provide water, refreshments, maybe some snacks to people that were in line to vote, either through early voting or maybe on election day. Now, our election cycles are usually in August or something. We would have a primary, maybe in the spring we might have a primary, or then our national election days are in November. It's hot in Florida in many of those timeframes. Even in November, it can be warm. If people decide not to vote by mail, if people decide not to early vote, but they want to vote, they're going to show up on election day, on that national election day. We just heard November 2nd for the city of Orlando election coming up. So if there's a lot of people that are showing up and it takes a while, they may get thirsty or they may require some nourishment. So civic organizations cannot hand out water or refreshments within 150 feet of the polling location entrance. Now, beyond that, we can, but if you get closer to the door, 150 feet, it's about 30 yards or something like that. But again, why? Why can't people do this? So again, just something that's part of that bill that gives maybe voters pause to say, why can't a civic organization hand out refreshments? Private funding, this was in SB 90. It prohibits election officials from seeking or receiving private funds. And this could be like from a civic organization to say, hey, we'll provide water or we'll provide refreshments. Can't do that anymore. Now, even though the supervisor of elections office can provide water and refreshments within that 150 feet of the entrance to the polling location, did they have the money to do that? Because now they're having to provide staffing for those voting boxes and those drop boxes, etc. Resign to run. This is part of SB 90 that strikes language. So let me back up. So when a local official, a local charter, county, or municipality, when somebody who's an elected official resigns prior to the end of their term, it was required that that county or municipality hold a special election to fill that seat. That requirement that a special election happen has been stricken from the law. And now, although municipalities and local charter counties can hold a special election, the governor holds the key. And if the governor wants to appoint somebody to that seat, they can. And also the governor operates on his or her time frame in filling that vacancy. So what this does, if the governor decides they're going to fill that vacancy, what that does is it takes away the rights of the local citizens to vote on their own person to represent them in their local communities. And what it also says, if the governor decides not to fill that seat in a timely manner, it's within the governor's prerogative to do so. Again, SB 90 brought that to bear. Returning citizens, these are people that have been incarcerated, that have retained their rights to, had their rights restored to vote. And prior to SB 90, there was a public record exemption from our returning citizens from being targeted or having their votes challenged. That exemption has gone away with SB 90. So there is concern that returning citizens that have had their voting rights restored, that could they be targeted for some reason during the voting process, or could they have their votes challenged? Finally, the last thing I want to tell you about is legislative interference, and this is in civil suits. So SB 90 requires government officials who are party to civil suits in which election laws are being challenged to provide notice at 3 stages to the House Speaker, the Senate President, and the Attorney General. When these notices are required, lacks clarity in SB 90, and the language is vague in terms of when this needs to happen, what needs to be communicated. And so also could there be any settlement conversations in regards to civil suits? That is unclear. So again, just, a lot of roadblocks in the way of this process. So what can you do? Yes, SB 90 has been made law, but you can go on the state of Florida website and you can see who your senators are, who your Congress folks are, and you can know how they voted on SB 90, because every law that is voted on, there is a record of who voted which way on any legislation that has been voted on. And so you can find out how your representatives voted on SB 90. If they voted for it, you can write to encourage them to rethink that. You can make your voice known through voting. And if you say, I don't want to vote for somebody that voted for SB 90, you can join organizations like the League of Women Voters or some of the other organizations represented tonight who support voting rights. And you can help register new voters if you are certified and want to help in the voting process. So I know it's a lot that we've covered tonight, but I think the overview of SB 90 is just to say there's a lot of steps, a lot of hurdles in an otherwise very successful process. And so you need to think about, why was this legislation even entertained and passed? And I'll leave that for you to decide. But thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share with you some of the nuances of SB 90.
Thank you for your insight on this important matter, Gina. This was some really great information. I'm sure it's left a lot of thought for people on this call. All of us have received the tools to follow up and ensure we reach out to our elected officials to ask the right questions to move forward. You have listened to some amazing speakers this evening. We have online, we have the program manager, Alicia Bromfield with Equal Ground, who has been answering a number of questions that you've asked in the box. President Tiffany Hughes with the NAACP, and of course, Ms. Gina Hall with the League of Women Voters of Orange County, who are live to answer a few questions. Alexis and Antoinette have been taking notes. Alexis and Antoinette, are there any unanswered questions in the chat?
I would also like to recognize Supervisor Arrington is here from the Osceola office as well.
Perfect. Welcome, Supervisor.
Thank you, Michelle. We actually do have a few unanswered questions. This one would be directed to Supervisor Arrington. One of the questions was, if a student is away at college, how would they go about voting?
They can still request a mail ballot, but one thing I want to correct from the previous speaker is you must have an identifying number to request a mail ballot. And so in other words, I do not have an identifying number attached to my voter record. So I could not request a mail ballot no matter what I did. I haven't made any changes to my voter record in 35 years. I still live in the same house. I still got the same name. I'm still a member of the same party. So I do not have my driver's license or my social security number as part of my voter record. So if I were to go into the hospital the day before or a week before the election and I decided I wanted to vote by mail, I could not request a mail ballot. So I encourage you to make sure that you have an identifying number attached to your voter record. So if that student has an identifying number, which most new registrations do, then they could call our office or any supervisor's office prior to 10 days before the election and request a mail ballot. They can send us a written request by mail, email, but that request must include a signature and that identifying number.
Thank you very much for that. This question, I would believe, could be answered by any of our partners. It's more about finding out measures that are on the ballot. Someone would like to know what is a good resource to use to understand ballot measures and possibly how a vote will affect their community or Florida in its entirety.
Gina, I think that would be a good question for you.
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry, Antoinette.
It's okay. The question is, what is a good resource to use to understand ballot measures and how particular ballot measures may affect a local community or Florida in its entirety?
There is something called Vote 411 that you can go to that will advise of ballot measures. Also, on many supervisor of elections website, as it gets closer to an election, they will have information about ballot initiatives that people can read up on. And I salute people that desire to do that to be a more informed electorate.
Thank you. I believe this question would be a good question for our representative from Equal Ground. It's a question about redistricting. How big of an impact does redistricting have on community funding?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so redistricting on community.
Oh, we lost you.
Alicia, I think you've muted yourself.
I'm sorry, they're talking this whole time. Okay, so redistricting on community funding, that is going to be, and as well as, I hope that answered it well for you all.
You went in and out a little. I don't know if it's your connection. If you could maybe type that answer in the chat,
Sure.
then our participants can see the response.
Okay.
Our next question, again, this could be answered by either the representative from League of Women Voters or Equal Ground, or even NAACP. The question is, I heard resources for Spanish speakers mentioned. Are there resources available anywhere for Haitian Creole families or families with other first languages?
Supervisor Arrington, could you please address that?
It depends on your locations. Some counties do print their ballot, have a ballot printed in Haitian. We have some election workers that do speak Creole. That helps, but you are also always welcome to bring someone to the polling location if you're voting in person, either early or election day, to assist you with your ballot. If you're concerned about this, I would encourage you to vote by mail. Because you can vote by mail, you can always call a friend if you have issues with translation, or you can receive help at home. But remember, on election day, every voter is entitled to bring their own assistance if they want to.
Thank you. I believe all of the other questions have been answered. I'm just double checking. Oh, here's a question. This would be for Supervisor Arrington again. If a registered voter wants to change their party affiliation, how many days before the election can that be done?
29, just like registering to vote, we must have that record in our office 29 days prior to the election. Remember that you can also do that online now, as long as you have an identifying number, either your driver's Florida driver's license, because we use the signature. Changing your party requires a signature, and we would take that signature from your DMV record, but it must be done 29 days prior to the election.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank
That
you
is
so
all of
much.
our questions. Yes.
Thank you, Antoinette, and thank you everyone for such great questions. This has been very, very insightful and exciting. And also I want to thank you for allowing me to serve as your MC for this event. It has been a pleasure, and I hope you've learned a nugget or two about voting. Before you leave, we have a survey for you to complete. The link will be dropped in the chat and also displayed on the screen. But remember when we said earlier, what I said earlier? Think about it now. I would like to introduce Dr. Natalie J. Ford, who will have the opportunity to discover how much you have learned. If you have been paying attention, a prize or two is in it for you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Good evening, everyone. A great deal of information was shared with you this evening, and we want to review some of that information with you to see what you have learned. These are some great takeaways, and we hope that you will share them with others. In fact, we encourage you to do so because we know that knowledge is indeed power. We have a few trivia questions that we want to have you to respond to, and we want you to respond to them in the chat. So this is how it's going to go. We have 4 questions. I'm going to read the question. At the end of my reading, the first person to type the correct response in the chat to each of the 4 questions will win a prize. So this is 4 opportunities. Now, if you're really good, you could win all 4. Who knows? It could be your lucky night. All right. Everybody got it? All right, here we go. Question number 1. And you got to type out the word true, type out the word false. You are allowed to use a post office box address for registering to vote. Look at the eager beavers. You guys were supposed to wait until I finished reading the question. Oh, can we follow directions? Antoinette.
Yes.
Alexis, who's our winner?
Our first correct answer, which is false, the answer to the question is false. Our first correct answer was from Lavera Morris.
And that was at the end of my reading, right?
Yes.
All right. Let's give her a round of applause. And I hope everybody's applauding because when it's your turn to win, you're going to want that support and kudos as well. All right. Moving on to question number 2. Y'all got the rules down now? So you eager beavers, you don't want to jump in too quickly. Number 2, the Orange County Supervisor of Elections Office identified 3 different ways to vote. List 1. Look at y'all following the rules. Yes, I love it. And do we have a winner? Antoinette and Alexis, what do we have? Who do we have?
We do. Our winner for question number 2, she stated vote by mail, which is correct. That is one of the ways.
Okay.
Is Amber Lamar.
All right, let's give her a round of applause. Congratulations on being one of our prize winners. Great job. Question number 3. Name the process. You guys ready? Is everybody ready? I see those accolades. I love it. I love it. I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait. And here we go. Oh, I still see accolades coming. This is great. Feeling the love. This is awesome. I love it. Okay, and here we go. Question number 3. Name the process when states use the results from the census to redraw their congressional district boundaries. Oh, I thought I was gonna get y'all with this one. All right, Antoinette, Alexis, who do we have?
All right.
Winner.
Our first correct answer, she was not the first to answer, but
Okay.
our correct answer, and the correct answer is redistricting, was Miss Lavera Morris. So she's a
All right, 2-time winner. Let's go. Congratulations. Oh, I'm loving the love in the chats. Way to go. Nice, nice, nice. And our fourth and final question. Here we go. This is a true or false. Oh, the love is still coming in. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. Way to go, ladies. And for our gentlemen who are here, yes, we do have some. This is great. True or false? SB 90 is an attempt to strengthen the integrity of the voting process. Ooh, I saw some people who were just eager beavers. What is that?
All right.
And who is our winner for our fourth and final question?
The winner of our fourth and final question, the person who gave the correct answer after you finished reading.
Okay, now.
Because we're about following directions.
We are all about following directions.
And typed out the whole word.
And typed out the whole word.
Which is false.
False.
It's Miss Rona McGarity.
All right, let's give it up for Miss McGarity. Yes. Thank you so much for participating. We appreciate your enthusiasm. And now I'm going to turn it over to the next person you will see for this segment of our program.
Sharon, you're muted.
Thank you. Hello. We hope you've enjoyed this evening's presentation. I am the Social Action Chair, Sharon Williams. Delta Sigma Theta has been committed to service through social action since our founding in 1913, because social action is what we do. Our chapter is committed to presenting programming that educates our community by providing fact-based information to elected officials and voters. We want you to have the tools to be an informed voter. On behalf of our chapter president, Latricia Pender, and the members of the Orange County, Florida Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, I want to thank all of our presenters for taking time out to educate us on voting roles, rights, and responsibilities. Now it's up to us to take the information we've received here and act on it. We have the power to make a difference in our community. We encourage all attendees to share the knowledge you gained here tonight with others. As a reminder, your feedback is important to us. So before you leave, please complete the survey so that we can effectively evaluate this event. Thank you for joining us this evening. Good night.